have, we're going to postpone the Pledge of Allegiance until the 5:30 time slot. So I think we'll move right to the roll call. Ms. Anderson-Warren?
Councilmember Moreno? Here. Councilmember Himmerich? Here. Councilmember McKeown?
Here.
Councilmember Winter?
Here.
Councilmember Hara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Present.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. So we're all present. And call the, yes, right, we'll call the first item.
So the first item is Public Employee Evaluation, title City Clerk, and you have no request to speak.
All right, so we will adjourn to closed session and we will return at 5:30. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting from closed session. I will depart out of closed session. We did discuss item 1A, Public Employee Evaluation, title City Clerk, and our reportable action is that we have elected to give the city clerk a 5% raise. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes, it's
All right.
We need it, but we need a motion.
You need it made as a
I'll
motion?
move that we give Ms. Anderson-Warren a 5% raise.
Second.
All right, moved by
Unanimously seconded.
Winterer. I'll give it second to Himmelrich. There you go.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
Councilmember Moreno?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day is not here. And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that is a unanimous vote of the 6 members present.
Okay, so now we will, are you ready to go to the next meeting?
Yes, we are. So at this point, we will resume, I guess we're calling to order the 5:30 meeting. And since we just elected to give her a raise, I'm going to have Ms. Anderson-Warren lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I know. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So now I will call the roll. Councilmember Moreno?
Here.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Here.
Councilmember McKeown?
Here.
Councilmember Winter?
Here.
Councilmember Hara?
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. All right, let's call item 1.
Item 1, you have closed session and you have 1 request to speak. First, we have existing litigation. It's Pico Neighborhood Association and Maria Loya versus the City of Santa Monica. Then we have agency designated representative, which is Lori Gentle. She's the Chief People Officer, HR Director, and it's with the Bargaining Unit Coalition of Santa Monica City Employees. And then last, you have a litigation. It's Supton versus the City of Santa Monica. And you have 1 request to speak.
All right, we will hear from the public. Denise Barton for 2 minutes.
Good evening. Going back to the district voting case, which you lost, let's again go back to the contradicting statements you and the city have made about the case. Starting with the one of the most appalling, the city states that a district voting system may work well in larger cities like Los Angeles, but dividing up Santa Monica's 8.3 square mile community would pit neighborhood against neighborhood. Yet in another statement, the city clearly acknowledges that cities with fewer than 10,000 residents have been sued or threatened to be regarding district voting, with most municipalities settling before litigation. So what makes Santa Monica different than any of these other municipalities? Because in my research, I found no justification for it. Which would bring us back to your argument that the city has had at-large elections since 1946. But didn't the court find that it deliberately discriminates against minority voters? You discriminate against Latino voters just like you discriminate against disabled and elderly by not having a permanent ADA person. So when legitimate ADA complaints are brought to the temporary person, you are told to get a lawyer. Ending with the most appalling contradiction, being the city saying it wants the residents' input on the district voting, when in reality you told your lawyers it's the stakeholders' input you really want. And on what grounds are you going to appeal this case, since the Paulway case fell through and all your other arguments have been found to be illegal or discriminatory? Oh, and by the way, how do you plan to pay the residents back for the $10 to $20 million of city funds used to pursue this conflict of interest for you while in elected office? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. At this point, we will adjourn to closed session.
Before we do,
Oh, yes.
I would like to recuse myself from conference with labor negotiations. Even though I've been in contact already, and I know that there is actually no conflict about my adult children working for the city, I want to make sure that we maintain the transparency, not only for the city, but also for myself. And if in the future I find that there is actual no reason why I should recuse myself, then I will go ahead and attend then. But like I said, even though at the moment there is no conflict that we know of, I still want to make sure that we maintain that transparency for the city and for us.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Hara. So we will operate under that. What time do you think we'll be back, Ms. Dill?
6:30.
All right. We will be back at 6:30 to continue the remainder of the meeting. This is Women's History Month, and I am proud to present this proclamation to Sylvia Gazarian from the Commission on the Status of Women. I won't read the whole thing, but I will read a couple of paragraphs so you all understand why we're here. Whereas women and girls in the city of Santa Monica of every age, race, class, cisgender and transgender, and ethnic background play a critical economic, cultural, and social role by constituting a majority of its population, a majority of its college students, and a significant portion of its workforce. And whereas women and girls in the city of Santa Monica, just as women and girls in the state of California and around the world, serve as leaders in every major progressive social change movement, the efforts of which create a more fair and just society for all. And then I'm going to go to whereas the city of Santa Monica has adopted this resolution to support the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to remain committed to women's rights and not tolerate violence against women, unequal pay, and uneven academic and economic opportunities, and has delegated local oversight and implementation to the Santa Monica Commission on the Status of Women. And whereas Women's History Month and International Women's Day are observed nationally in March, now therefore I, Gleam Davis, Mayor, on behalf of the entire City Council, do proclaim the month of March as Women's History Month and invite everyone to join in celebrating by attending women's history programs and activities throughout the community, honoring its 2019 theme, Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. So, Ms. Gazarian, here's the proclamation, and congratulations, and thank you for all the work that you and the Commission do on behalf of women, girls, and the entire community of Santa Monica.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to speak first.
You want?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll let her speak and
Okay.
then we'll.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Davis and City Council members. Honoring women and girls is something we ought to do every day of the year, but we actually have an official 31-day period in which we do so loudly and proudly. Yes. The Commission on the Status of Women recognizes the importance of this proclamation, not just in March, but year-round. Standing here with me are my fellow commissioners who work alongside me on important issues in collaboration with the community and you. Knowing that the majority of the population in Santa Monica is women, the well-being of our community is always at the forefront of our work as we make progress with your support. Recently, the COSW recommended that the city consider legislation to protect hotel workers from sexual violence, unreasonable workloads, and provide comprehensive education and training. Upon hearing this recommendation, Council unanimously voted to support our request and directed staff to return with local laws to protect hotel workers in all areas the COSW outlined. We thank you all for this. We also are now working with Mount St. Mary's University on data collection to produce a current report on the status of women and girls in Santa Monica, which will highlight the citywide achievements and areas of improvement. We look forward to sharing this report with you hopefully by year end. And we continue to mentor a young woman from Samal High who one day wants to be an FBI agent. Our work does not stop there as we work on other areas of concern: all forms of harassment and sexual assault, Denim Day, homelessness, pay equity, domestic violence, and running for office. We continue to think equal, build smart, and innovate for change. In fact, this year we worked with over 30 partners to put together a thoughtful month-long calendar of events based on this year's national theme: Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. We are fortunate that with our 9th year of partnership with the Santa Monica Chamber to honor Marianne Williamson and Julie Pilat for our International Women's Day breakfast. We hope you will all join us. A picture is worth 1,000 words. To continue to inspire young leaders of our community, we have a powerful photo exhibit from students from Samo High and women photographers from APA highlighting women. These photos will be on display in City Hall's lobby through the end of March. Some of these individuals are here tonight, and we thank them for their impactful message through images. Thank you again for your ongoing support to think equal and build smart on issues that affect women and girls in our community. We welcome you to join us at our partner events through the month of March that are posted on our Facebook page, the city website, and distributed throughout the community. Thank you.
If we can do a photo really quick, that would be great. Yeah, we can do that. Everybody look at John.
All right, I'm going to move on right from here, trying to be as efficient as possible. So I'm going to ask Matt Flanders, the head coach of our Samo High Boys Water Polo Champions, to come up. So I just want to let you all know the Samo High Boys Water Polo team had a historic season in 2019. They captured their first CIF championship in program history with a 9-7 overtime victory over Capistrano Valley. The season's a fit reward for the years of work that I know you all have done, spending a lot of time in the pool and in the classroom, so we're pleased to welcome these exceptional young men. Mr. Flanders, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, thank you, Mayor Davis and the rest of the council. This has been a long celebratory period for us. We won in November, but I can't be more proud of these guys. Samo High Polo started around 1956, and it's taken us this long to get to the podium. And I'm blessed to be associated with the young men you have in front of you, not just in the pool, but in the classroom and just as friends. So congratulations, boys. Thank you, guys.
And we have, I'm not going to read them all because we would like to get out before 3 a.m., but we have commendations for each of the players, and I'd ask them to come up so we can take a photo.
Move back here, sir. Move back to the ball. Back up 3 steps.
Back up to the deep end of the pool. Deep end of the pool. Back. Come on. Try to talk the way they talk.
The deep end is back here, guys. Back here. See, they listen to her.
You guys are really squeezed.
A little bit more to get a lot kind of stuck. Oh.
There's one over here. So.
I'm having a hard time seeing everyone. Look at me. Okay.
What would you like me to do?
Oh.
No, they're really bored. Just good to see the boys in the big one.
Are we all over Instagram? Actually,
Yeah, I'll go too.
I can see all 3 of them. Right. Yeah, it's really hard. Everything. So much. Okay, we're gonna get started on 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. Yay. One more. Great. Thank you guys, everyone.
Go Vikings!
Coach, I'm going to give you All right, thank you so much. Oh, well, thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. 96. Best part of the water polo team, they all wear green tights, green spandex. Whenever we have a tech route, they come running right through the green. Oh, yeah, the greenies. That's right. Green Bay, they're totally straight and green. Their entire body is green.
All right, thank you, everyone. That was the fun part of the meeting. Now we got to do the other part of the meeting. All right, Ms. Anderson Warren?
So now I'd like to ask, are there any council members who have any brief reports on travel since the last meeting?
Any reports on travel? All right, I will very briefly report that although it was not at city expense, but at the expense of the government of the United Arab Emirates, I recently attended the World Government Summit in Dubai. It's a 3-day event. I was able to speak on several panels dealing primarily with issues relating to the global well-being movement and efforts to create more gender balance in the Arab world and throughout the world. And it was a very enlightening experience. I met a tremendous number of people who are working in both those spaces, learned a lot, and hope to bring some of that back to the city as we move forward over the coming year. All right. I think that takes us to item number 3.
Item 3 is the consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion, and you have 2 requests to speak.
All right, and council members, we do have both council and redevelopment successor agency items. Would we like to combine those for efficiency?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Winter, seconded by McEwen. I think we can do that by voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, let's combine them, so I'll need a roll call for the redevelopment successor agency.
Okay, so first let me announce that the redevelopment successor agency, you receive no compensation for that. Okay. Agency member Moreno.
Here.
Agency member Himmelrich.
Here.
Agency member McKeown.
Here.
Agency member Winter.
Here.
Agency member Hara. Here. And Chair Pro Tem O'Day.
Here.
Chair Davis.
Here. All right, we have the consent calendar in front of us. Do you need to call it, Miss, or did you already do that, Miss?
Yes,
Henderson?
we have 2 requests to speak.
All right, so we'll open up the public comment then. We have Jonathan Foster and Jerry Rubin.
Hi, everyone. I was going to speak about the pot issue. And what I was going to say basically was that I purposely stayed away from speaking about pot in Santa Monica because I actually don't think it's as cool as people make it out to be. And it has benefits, so I support the use, but I wanted to say a few observations I've experienced. And I don't know if it will be addressed, but I wanted to add my testimony at this time. Oversight is important, and I appreciate it. And I've seen a lot of switcheroo with the product. All of a sudden, one day, it was like a certain kind of product. I went in, and they had the same name on it, and all of a sudden, it wasn't the same pot. I was like, what the is that about? You know what I mean? So I want you to, the oversight's important, because they're doing switcheroo, and it's all about making money. And I've seen it happening. Thank you for having some, dispensaries here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Foster. Mr. Rubin?
Thank you very, very much. Mayor Davis, council members, city staff, fellow Santa Monicans. I just wanted to very quickly throw the support to the Summer Solstice Festival again in Ocean Park, which is one of the best events of the year, along with the July 4th celebration and some of the other ones that take place. I wanted to say that it's one of the greatest events, great bands. I remember the former head of the Main Street Business District, Gary Gordon, who now lives in Florida, was one of the people that was coordinating that years ago, but with the city's involvement now, it's even more well attended, and he came out and performed the Gary Gordon Band last year, and I hope that could happen again. And I wanted to put a shout out to another person named Joe Papersky, who is involved with the Main Street shops there, and he was very involved in getting it started. And I don't know if he's still involved or not, but kudos to him. So thank you very, very much for that great summer event.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. All right, council, the matter is before us. That closes the public hearing.
I'd like to pull item 3G, please.
All right, item 3G. Any other items that people would like to pull? All right, then I'll entertain a motion for the entire consent calendar absent item 3G.
So moved. Second.
Moved by McEwen, seconded by Winterer. Any further discussion? All right, we'll have a vote. Ms. Anderson Warren?
Agency Councilmember Morena?
Yes.
Agency Councilmember Himmerich?
Yes.
Agency Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Agency Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Agency Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Chair Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yes.
Chair Mayor Davis.
Yes, that passes unanimously.
And so let me read item 3G.
Yes, please.
Item 3G is the resolution approving final parcel map number 74822 for a 3-unit condominium project at 1900 20th Street.
All right, Mr. Cole, you are requesting the opportunity to speak.
It is not customary, and I'm a little reticent to do so at this time, but some concerns were expressed about the study which is listed on our agenda as 3I, which will take a look at the classifications for the nearly 200 staff members who work in our 5 libraries that make up the Santa Monica Public Library System, about the cost. And these were public concerns not raised by the council. And I just wanted to say 2 sentences about that to help those who are concerned understand why we do this. We have not done it in 27 years. The library field has changed dramatically over the past 3 decades. And so we have people working with outmoded titles. Why does it take $100,000 to study that? Well, we are governed by civil service rules and we're governed by labor agreements. And so we have a much more elaborate process that goes into re-examining what those job titles and duties should be going forward. It's not our practice when we can do work in-house to employ consultants, but there are sometimes when that is more efficient and more cost-effective, and we think that will be so in the long run. Again, I'm reticent to plow into this, but I know in these times of concern about fiscal sustainability that it's important that people understand why we do what we do, whether it's how much it costs to build a bathroom or how much it costs to build a new city services building. Thank you very much.
All right, so Ms. Anderson Warren, can you call item 3G?
So that's the resolution approving final parcel map number 74822 for a 3-unit condominium project at 1900 20th Street.
And Councilmember Hara, did you want a staff report or did you just want to?
I don't know whether or not it is, I'm either out of time or if I can still pose some questions about this item. I know that the previous readings I was not present. However, I just wanted to know whether or not we felt that this was, so this property has been empty for quite a long time. And it just doesn't seem to me that we are moving towards building our affordability stock if we are going to allow for 3 condos to be built there. So I just had a couple of questions as to, whether or not it's the right time for me to kind of pause this, or if I'm too late to do this, or for us to even consider, especially, I know that we didn't have, one of our frameworks was not affordability then, but I just wanted to ask that question.
All right, but I know Councilmember McEwen's in the queue, but it looks like Mr. Shin would like to barge in, so barge away.
Councilmember, I want to give you at least some answers to that question. So what's before you tonight is the approval of a final subdivision map. And what a final subdivision map is essentially if a developer has met enough conditions in a tentative map, which the Planning Commission had more authority to review and approve, then it is essentially a ministerial action for the council to approve the final map if the council believes, based on staff's recommendation, that the work has been done. And so this is not a moment for the council to reopen development review for this particular project. if the council believes that there are conditions that are not met objectively, that would be a place for the council to say that we don't want to approve this because, for example, a road ballot has not been installed. And that's the extent of the council's authority at this moment.
All right, and Councilmember McEwen, you're in the queue.
I had some questions before this became on our agenda, which I actually asked the staff ahead of time, and I ask this often on condo developments, which is what was on the site before. Are we losing rent-controlled affordable apartments? And this prominent site on the corner has actually been vacant, as you say, for some time. I think maybe 20, 25 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if at times we've looked at it as a possible affordable housing site, but it is a single lot, which makes doing affordable housing difficult. So this has been vacant a long, long time. There has been no other interest in developing it, and as legal staff just said, it's gone through a process where our approval on the consent calendar is essentially ministerial.
All right, any further discussion or questions? Then I'll entertain a motion to pass item 3G.
I'll move that.
Second.
All right, moved by O'Day, seconded by Morena. We should probably have a roll call vote on that.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Morena?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That concludes the consent calendar.
Next, we have item 7A, which is a second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Santa Monica Municipal Code Section 3.16.120 to exempt additional zero-emission vehicles from parking meter payment requirements.
Move adoption.
Second.
All right, moved by McEwen, seconded by Winterer. We'll have a vote.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
So I recused I recused the last time, and this time I guess I should abstain, since I didn't have time to get out of the room to recuse. It all happened too fast.
Councilmember Morena?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that passes with 6 yes votes and 1 abstention.
Next, we have item 8A, adopt a resolution to modify council rules of order, and you have 4 requests to speak.
All right, is there a staff report?
Yes, that's me. So I'm giving just a brief staff report. So I'm presenting the council, modifying council rules. The reason for the recommended changes are to promote more effective and efficient council meetings, not only for council, but also members of the public who choose to attend and speak. So the recommendations are to allow members of the public who want to speak for a shorter period of time to speak at the beginning of the item. There was a recommendation that it should be may be able to speak as opposed to just to speak. So that's something to consider. Reduce speakers' time donation to 1 minute. Establish special time limits for lengthy meetings. The special time limits, by the way, is if you have more than 15 members present to speak on one item, the time would go down to 1 minute, and if it's more than 40 members on all items on the agenda, everyone's speaker time would go down to 1 minute. To hear the council appointments, and so it's currently where council appointments have always gone under special agenda items, and so this is just a cleanup to add city council appointments to that. And then limit multiple applicants and appellants' time to 10 minutes total, and to repeal the previous council rules. Now that was something that planning department recommended because there was some questions that came up in one of our appeals recently. So those are my recommendations, and you have, as I said, you have 4 requests to speak, and I'm open for any questions.
All right, looks like the city attorney would like to make a statement or say something.
Council, in reviewing the resolution, we recognized that a sentence should have been underlined that wasn't. The sentence is in the special time limits for applicants and appellants, And the sentence that was added and should have been underlined is, if there are multiple applicants or appellants for one administrative item, all applicants and appellants must share their respective 10-minute allocation unless the city council authorizes additional time by majority vote to enhance the administrative record. So the change was clearly stated in the staff report and in the city clerk's report, but the sentence should have been underlined in the resolution.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of staff before we go to the public comment? Councilmember McEwen?
The word may was brought up, and that was a suggestion that I made just to clarify. What that means is if someone is willing to speak for 1 minute, they may elect to go at the front. They are not required to. So if somebody who speaks for 1 minute is part of a sequence of multiple speakers following somebody who spoke for the full 2, they may still choose to speak later in the meeting to be in that sequence of speakers. And that is the staff recommendation based on the clarification I'd asked for, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open the public hearing. I'll call all 4 names. Denise Barton, Jonathan Foster, Jerry Rubin, and Mila Reason. Sorry. All right, Ms. Barton?
Good evening. More contradictions from you. The statement, the Santa Monica City Council has established rules and procedures to promote effective and efficient decision-making, transparency, and inclusiveness at all City Council meetings, which this action you want to take and this item does not coincide with. Regarding modifying the time limits to let people speaking for 1 minute go before everyone else, would this be you showing preference to those speaking for only 1 minute? Or would you be punishing the speakers who speak for 2 minutes or more? Aren't all members of the public supposed to be treated equally, as is the first come, first served way it is now? Then you want to reduce donated time to another member of the public to 1 minute. Let's see, other cities allow 3 to 5 minutes for public speaking, which you've already reduced to 2 minutes. So by this action, it might seem as you're trying to make it as hard as possible for the public speakers to express themselves and give additional information to the public. And of course, special time limits for special meetings. When you did this for the retreat, you claimed you would have 2,000 speakers, when in reality there were 14 to 20 speakers. Yet you kept the 1 minute time limit, resulting in residents not having enough time to say what they wanted to say. Then I would think that there are rules and regulations on the speaking time for applications and appeals and administrative items. So what would be the real purpose in trying to change it? And isn't it interesting that council appointments have become more important than the public's time, which can be seen by you making appointments as a 2 item? What this really shows is that you do not care or want to hear what the residents have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Barton. Mr. Foster?
Hi again, I'm Jonathan Foster, and when I think about some of the aspects of the United States of America that I really appreciate, when I think about when they were 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, when they were walking off the boat and they were getting mowed down, pow, 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 getting killed, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3-year-old little young males, how hard fought freedom of speech has been, that you would take it away, you little wimps. Just in a little, we'll just sign it right off. The people have been dying to be able to speak, and you would take it away? Do you know that some of them were only 17 years old? Boom, boom, they were getting right off the boat, going right into the water, and you would just throw away freedom of speech like this. I can't even believe you people. I mean, we really please. What I also realize is your people's daily lives with your work life is so full now, you cannot properly serve the city of Santa Monica because you're so busy. If people really did show up here to speak up, you're just going to get it in an email, and then the public doesn't hear about this. Reduce the speaker's time donation to 1 minute. Let's have 2 minutes, please. Let's have the 2 minutes back on the public input. I mean, they're dead. They're gone for just to try to speak up. I mean, the First Amendment was actually number 3. And Moses Seixas said, we can't agree on 1, we can't agree on 2, but we can agree on 3, and we'll make it number 1, freedom of speech. Let's have some back in here. Just long time. Plus, how disrespectful to the people that made Santa Monica and gave us a 2-minute. You would disrespect them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foster. Jerry Rubin?
Thanks again, Mayor Davis. Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica. I actually fully support most all of this, and I'll get to that in a minute. And I've been suggesting it now for quite a while myself. As someone who speaks just about at every council meeting, I don't see this as something that's restricting people's right to speak. I think this is a balanced item that's respecting the need of a community to have shorter council meetings, because that affects not only you council members, it affects city staff, it affects the community, it affects everyone. So there needs to be consideration of that, so this is a very responsible item. I support everyone except the 40-person collective. That would kind of penalize someone that might just be a singular speaker, whereas the others might be able to say, I agree with the person ahead of me. And you got to know, 15 people, that's not kicking in tonight. That wouldn't kick in 98% of the time anyhow. Everyone would still have 2 minutes. So it's only when you have a huge number. I still remember when the art thing in Bergamot had like 75 people, and other people were affected. I remember the Big Blue Bus people had to wait, everyone. It affects everyone, and that ultimately affects our city. You could say a lot in 1 minute. Imagine if you had to do a Super Bowl ad and pay for it. You would be able to frame your words thoughtfully. I do hope that if this happens, and I hope it does, that the time doesn't start until the person gives their name and this and that, and then you can be kind of loose about starting the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Ms. Reason? Reason.
I'm Myla Reason. I live in Santa Monica, and hello, everybody. I can appreciate the problem of lengthy meetings and trying to figure out how to manage these extraordinarily long meetings, but there are certain aspects here that I think you should rethink, especially that donating time. If someone makes an effort to get here because there's some expert who needs more time, I think that it's a mistake to then allow them only to donate 1 minute after they've taken the time to come down here. For example, tonight we have a really important resolution on the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, and I think that it would be really helpful for city councilors to learn more about this issue, this critical issue. And, 2 minutes may not be enough. But anyway, thank you all for all of your good work, and decide wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Councilmember Himmelrich? No. Okay. No, we're fine. Thank you, ma'am.
But I hope you'll ask questions for 13F.
All right. That concludes the public hearing. The matter is now before the council. Councilmember Himmelrich?
Thank you, Mayor. So I am really having challenges with these proposed rule changes because there are a lot of them, and I think it's really drastic. And I think that to the extent possible, we should minimize changes to the public's ability to speak to us to the greatest extent possible. I would like to make a motion that we leave the rules the same, including 2-minute donations. We still have the power to reduce to 1 minute if we want, except that Council members McEwen idea that 1 minute speakers may go first is a carrot, I think. I think that people may take us up on it. I think that people need to plan their remarks. So I would propose that we put 1 minute speakers first if they want to go first, that students go first in any item so that they can go home and do their homework. That's not in our rules. And something else that isn't in our rules that I believe should be in our rules is under state law, when somebody needs a translator, they're specifically allocated double the time. And well, I think we should have that in our rules so that when speakers come in who need translation, they know that they're going to have 4 minutes with the translation. With respect to the multiple applicants, appellants, if there's only one administrative item, with applicants, I think there typically is only one fee paid. But for appellants, if there's more than one fee paid, because there's more than one issue that's being appealed, I think that each appellant should get the amount, the 10 minutes that they would have otherwise. If one fee is paid for a bunch of appellants, I think that having them combine is fine. We do that with applicants anyway. I've never seen 2 applicants. So that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, let me see if I can restate it.
I could do better. I could do better.
No,
than I
let me
just
see.
did.
So
Okay.
your motion is to leave the rules the same with the following exceptions, that you would allow people who've designated or requested only 1 minute to speak to go at the beginning of the item if they want to, that you would allow students to go first within the item, as opposed to at the beginning of the meeting, but within the item.
Yes, although actually I'm flexible. I thought about that. If I could see making time for students at the beginning of the meeting.
All right, and that you want to modify the rules to double the time, specifically, even though that's our current policy, to add a specific rule that doubles the amount of time for those people who use translators, and you want to combine appeals only when there's been only one fee paid for the appeal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and that was made by Himmelrich, seconded by Moreno. All right, Councilmember McEwen?
Well, the council rules did not come down on tablets. These are things that we modify from time to time. And I think what may have thrown a lot of people in what's before us tonight is how many things were put on as one big concept. The idea of letting 1 minute speakers go first was not my idea. My idea was simply to change it to that they do go first to they may go first. But I think it's actually a very good idea, and I'll tell you why. I've sat here for over 20 years watching on long items as we call out names, and as the night gets longer, more and more of those names go unanswered. People just can't stay to be heard. Not everybody can. We have people who come to our meetings often who know to get here early and turn in a chit, and they always get to speak first. And the people who come and don't know that sit there for hours, and eventually, because of their jobs or because of childcare requirements, they have to go home. This would give those people who cannot stay late, who have some good reason why 11 o'clock is the time they've got to go, to choose to speak for a minute early on. A minute is actually quite a bit of time. You've never heard very many radio commercials more than 1 minute long. Think of how long some of them seem to be. So I think if somebody wants to stand up and make their point, they can do that in a minute. If they do feel they have to say more, they can stay. Or they can submit something to us in writing or by one of any number of other means. So that I'm quite comfortable with, and I hope that we will pass that tonight. Now, when I say we've changed our council rules over the years, we at one time did have a rule that students spoke first. And we eventually decided to take that out because it was too difficult, A, to tell who was a student, and there were all sorts of issues that came up with that. Frankly, we also had people bringing students to game the system to get their word in first when, frankly, the student didn't know much about what the issue was handed something to read. So I'm not so sure I want to put that into the rules without further discussion and consideration tonight. The double time for translations, assuming that it is a translation into English, I would assume that we should put that into the rules. It's always been our practice. I say that just if somebody wants to come and have what they're saying translated into Gaelic, we shouldn't give them an extra 2 minutes for that, and I say that as an Irishman. Reducing the donation, I think the thought there was that the person could speak for 2 minutes, but if they hand it off, it's a minute. I don't think that that is all that big a deal, that we need to deal with that tonight. I think we need to think about it more. The limits for large meetings, it could be, I'd like to bring that back at a later date, it could be that 15 persons per item and 40 per night are just not the right numbers, that it might be 20 per item and 60 per night. Or maybe instead of cutting it down from 2 minutes to 1 minute, that number of speakers cuts it down to 90 seconds. There may be sweet points in here that this may be too extreme. The moving of council appointments, we've only done that 3 times in 20 years. We never thought to have it an assigned agenda place. That's all that is. There's nothing to that at all. And the limiting the number of applicants, I would like to hear from the Planning Commission and perhaps some other people on what the implications have our legal staff go over that. Because if there are multiple applicants who have different issues, it seems unfair to limit their time. So I would support the motion with the exception of the part about students. I'd like to take some time on that and think about how we would identify students and avoid that's being abused. But I definitely support the voluntary 1 minute priority and the 2 minutes for the translation. So are you willing to modify the motion to remove the students?
No.
Okay, well, then I won't be able to support the motion as made.
All right, Councilmember Hara.
So I understand the need for the flow of the meeting. I think that asking or having those that are here only for, they want to speak only for a minute, that they do get prioritized. However, there's several questions that I have. You speak about having people preparing for our meetings, and whenever they are going to be lengthy meetings, that they can prepare ahead of time. When we try to look at it from the standpoint of our retreat, there was a lengthy preparation time for some of the speakers to come and tell us what their thoughts were. So it's quite different when people have to prepare either at home or even here when they're in chambers to try to figure out how to get their point across to us, so that way it can make some sense, so that we can understand and we can try to figure out exactly how it is that we can meet their needs. In the interpretation, I don't think I'd like the translation piece. I think I prefer to use interpretation because I believe that it's not only about language, it is about also having someone that may come in that does not, cannot speak for themselves, but that they need somebody else to be interpreting for them, whatever it is that we are saying, and that they may not be able to read. So I would like to include that piece so that we can be very sensitive to those needs. For the youth part, I think that regardless of what time it is that they request, that we should always listen to them, whether it is at the beginning of the item or at the beginning of the meeting. I think that it would be possible for us to request only for the students that they bring in their ID. They should have their ID here from Santa Monica, correct? Especially the ones from high school, or those, I'm pretty sure that also all the others that are not from high school also have their IDs. So I think that that would be an easy solution for us. I think that if we limit it to 1 minute, and bigger meetings, does that mean that people can still donate their 1 minute? I don't quite see that clarification there, so I would like some clarification on that. And And we're talking about equitable consistency. Is this within the values that we just adopted at our city retreat? And is this moving us towards engagement of our community, or is this moving us away from it? Have we looked at other cities, just like Council Member Hemmerich said, that there are other cities that provide 3 to 5 minutes? What does that look like? How is it that, maybe their population is not as engaged as, as Santa Monica is? And I just want us to be really, really clear about this value that we just weaved into our framework. So unless I can get some answers, or unless I can reevaluate this, I don't think that I would be also voting for the item as it is. I definitely am for moving people, not prioritizing them, but requesting if they would like to speak first, if they have a minute. And I cannot agree with reducing the speaker's time, unfortunately.
Okay. I just want to understand, because with respect to the interpreter, I understand what you're saying. It sounds as if you're supporting the motion except for the language relating to the interpreter.
No, I'm not. I'm also not in agreement to reducing the time for the speakers.
I'm not either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm saying is we keep all the rules the same, and we have the rules as they exist now. So 2 minutes. So 2 minutes per speaker, and 2 minutes for anybody who donates time to that speaker. So 4 minutes if you get time donated. Otherwise, it's 2 minutes, right? And the only thing that I hear you taking issue with is the issue of the language of interpreter versus translator. And I'm perfectly willing to have it say interpret instead of translate. Right, yes, but you do support the voluntary 1 minute, just not an involuntary 1 minute, is that right?
That's correct.
So we're on exactly the same page, except for the interpreter language. I said translator because that's what the state law says, but I'm perfectly happy to use the word interpreter instead.
All right, let's go through the speaker queue, and then if people want to get back in the speaker queue, they can. Councilmember Winterer.
So the staff report notes that a lot of this is being driven by people who complain that they came to speak on something and had to wait for a long time. And I suspect we get 2 categories of speakers that come to the council: those who are meeting regulars and know that, okay, if I'm going to speak on an 8 item, I can go out and go to Starbucks for a while and come back, etc. But I do know in recent months we've had a number of speakers come out for the first time, and they show up at 5:30. And they sit here during closed session, and then they wait till 10 or 11 to speak on the item. I think we can do a better job of communicating to those people what their expectations should be. The question for the clerk: we all get this timed agenda. Is there any reason that has to be a document that we can't have available for the general public to give them an idea when they might want to speak on something?
I think that look, it's not a state secret, but I think that the trouble is sometimes we run ahead, and then
well,
people
you would
will
release it with the warning that this is an art, not science, and that you might. I just think we can do a better job of educating the people on our website, on the clerk's webpage about. For instance, we all talk about the fact that we get emails from people about agenda items at 6 p.m. when we've already started the meeting. There's no reason we can't educate the public that, look, if you want to email the council about something, you need to get it in by, say, 3 p.m. on a council meeting day if you expect them to hear from you, to listen to your input. I think we can do a better job at the desk out there of explaining to people, okay, even if they're not seeing the time agenda, at least giving them some guidelines. Okay, you just showed up at 5:30 to speak. You really don't need to come back here until 7:30. I think we can address some of the challenges by just doing a better job of communicating with the public. And the other thing I think we communicate with the public is, I think the issue to me is not the quantity of public input, it is the quality of public input. When we get those 65 people all coming down and telling us that this one thing is great or this one thing is terrible, and it gets really, really monotonous, it's tough on us, and it's also tough on the people in the room. If we can educate the public that it's a much more effective way to present your point, to get your 5 or 6 salient points about the issue, have 5 or 6 speakers speak to that, and then have the other 30 people in the room to support that stand up, we're all going to be better off in the long run, because we'll have a more intelligent dialogue. We won't be here at 3 in the morning trying to decide important issues. We can start trying to educate the public that that's a better approach. I think there's some tools we can do about outreach and engaging the public on how to come down here and make a more effective presentation and when to do it at what time. In terms of the motion, I'm generally supportive. I would suggest a friendly amendment that with the students section says students through high school. I don't really see any reason for someone who's in college. I don't want someone to come down here and say, I'm taking, a continuing education class in screenwriting at Santa Monica College. I'm 50 years old, but I want to speak first. So I think we ought to clarify.
That's a very friendly amendment. I agree with that. I was once in college.
I am totally supportive of the idea of people giving the choice of speaking for 1 minute, if that's what they choose to do. I mean, that's just choice. I think that I'm skeptical about rushing into curtailing speaker times for longer agenda items from under 2 minutes. We used to be 3 minutes a number of years ago in this city. I think we've gone about as far as we can. I don't see with the speaker donation, I mean, if you give 2 minutes to someone that you could have spoken for 2 minutes, it's sort of a wash, right? And we don't have a lot of people utilizing that. So I'm generally supportive of the motion, but I do think in the whole we could also address some of these challenges with better outreach to the public.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yeah, I mean, I think Councilmember Winter hit on some of the important points about the purpose here. I mean, what we're looking for is to have quality engagement and conversation in this meeting and not to curtail people's input, but rather to make sure that by having a predictable and efficient meeting that everyone can be heard and that we can deliberate and any meeting that you will have in any setting, private sector, public sector, nonprofit, whatever you might need, and even in a community meeting like this, needs to have some rules. And by having those rules and adhering to them and keeping them as effective and efficient as possible, you make for a better discourse. And I think that's what I'm seeing in the recommendations in the staff report. And I'm moved by Councilmember McEwen. I hadn't known the history that we had student preference previously. And in thinking about your comments about how that preference had been abused in the past, I was reminded of just last Thursday night when we were all told by a 10-year-old that we were lining our pockets with developers' money. And we've spent many nights staying up very late, well past 3 a.m. In fact, one night I recall with kids crying and being told that we were stealing money from community organizations in town. So I'm sensitive to this issue of the student preference being abused, and I would vote to keep that out.
Councilmember McEwen?
And I had just softened and decided that if we limited it to through grade 12, I'd be willing to live with it and see if it again is abused, because frankly, it has the potential for great abuse, and it has been done in the past. On the other hand, I do respect the need of students to get out of here early too. So I was going to soften on that one, and maybe your vote will come along with me. I don't know. What hasn't been mentioned here is the change of council appointments to a 2 item. I'd like to offer that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, that is a friendly amendment. And I just want to say that I think that all of the other things suggested here are things that we ought to think about, but I think that making radical wholesale changes is not necessary, and we need to see what these incremental changes, what effect they have on the length of our meetings, if any.
And that was the point I made the first time I spoke, was I think this was too much to take on at one time. So what we're left with is the voluntary 1-minute priority, which I think will really give the opportunity to family people and early morning workers to be heard by the council more effectively. There's been some discussion, which I think we will be coming back to, about the appropriate length of time for people to be allowed to speak overall, 3 to 5 minutes in some cities. And I wanted to ask our city manager, who has wide experience with how other cities handle these. My understanding is that many of those cities that allow 3 to 5 minutes also put a hard cap on how long the public input is allowed to go. That after 60 minutes, each of those people who's had 3 to 5 minutes got to speak, but the rest of the people, they're told our time is up. Is that how some other cities are handling this?
Look, there's 88 cities in Los Angeles County, and rates of participation in public meetings vary dramatically. But you are correct. Many cities like us that have a great many speakers and have to conduct the city's business do put limits, and it's kind of first come, first served. When I first, 37 years ago, entered into this arena of public service, they used to insist in Pasadena, my hometown, that you put whether you were for or against an item. We dropped that because it created endless confusion, because there was, well, what if I like some and don't like others? But there would be alternating speakers, one for, one against, one for, one against. But it is not uncommon on items of controversy to limit the total amount, and I think it would stand to reason, we've all been through this, that after the 40th or 50th speaker, there are very few new arguments. There are sometimes some new language, some new quips, some gallows humor about how long it took for them to wait in the audience. But after you get past the 40th speaker, you almost never hear a new or fresh argument. It's the old saying that we've heard at this dais. Everything has been said, but not everyone has had a chance to say it.
All right.
Well, let me respond. My thinking here is it has always been the history of this city to make extraordinary efforts to make sure that as many people as possible get heard. And the changes that I'm supporting tonight are being made specifically so that more people can be heard in the amount of time, not that we have, but also that the public has to be able to stay with us for a meeting. Remember, this is not just us. This is the people who come down here and want to be heard. And if they have to wait till midnight or 1 in the morning, they just won't be heard. And so rather than cut things off with a hard limit like some cities do, we are struggling with how to balance input from a large number of people so as many as possible get heard on all the items that they care about. So I think what we're left with is the voluntary 1 minute, allowing students through grade 12, and interpretation, and the council appointment being moved to a 2-item. Does that summarize your motion as you recall it?
No, she also,
except for the multiple applicants who have paid multiple,
Right.
or multiple appellants who have paid multiple fees on different issues.
Well, I'd be willing just to drop out any change on applicants for a while. I think we're changing too many things at one time.
I actually am talking about appellants, so if somebody is appealing a decision, and you have 2 people on 2 different grounds who have paid fees, which are
I'm saying
fairly
they should each
substantial.
get the full 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
The way it is now.
Great,
The way it is
perfect.
now.
I like that.
And we'll
Councilman-
come back to these other issues. I'm not saying that the work that
Well,
staff has done in suggesting these is wasted at all, but let's see what these changes affect, and then we can determine what other changes we may need to do farther down the road.
Councilmember Morena, I really would like to stick to the speaker's queue, people.
Thank you. So I just want to echo Kevin's point and thank Denise for putting this together. It's incredibly important that people get the right to speak. In so much as, my friend who's here tonight said, I'll be there at 5:30. And I texted him back, said, no, not 5:30, because it is confusing. So I do want to reiterate Ted's point. And if there is a way that we can communicate better with people to try and slot them so that they can plan their schedule as well. The high school thing makes total sense, but again, to Kevin's point, I'm the new guy. I didn't know how it was abused before. I do want to be sensitive to that, and I do think that this is a dynamic process, and I'd like to keep it as such, and so that we review this in some periodic basis and try and keep some type of scorecard to see how we're doing, and I think we'll know it up here, but so that the public also knows how we're keeping score and so that they can keep following us in that regard. So those are my points, and I'm happy to move forward.
Councilmember Hara?
I'm sorry, I just neglected to state something else, that at the state of the city, if we are wanting to move toward having engagement in another way, at the state of the city, we had some interactive texting, and I don't know how feasible that would be, but maybe that would be something that we could definitely look into. I know that that's probably not possible today, but definitely something that we could look into. So that way, that would be another way of ensuring that people do get to let us know what it is that they would like for us to know.
All right, and I'm going to take a matter of privilege here since I haven't commented. So one of the clarifications, because one of the way the student's exemption or preference got abused was people would say, well, my 10-year-old is here to speak, but if you don't let me speak when my 10-year-old speaks, my 10-year-old doesn't get to go home. So what we ended up having, I think Councilmember McEwen probably remembers this, is we would give students a preference, but then their parents demanded equal preference because they had to take the student home. So we would give the student 2 minutes, then one parent 2 minutes, and the other parent 2 minutes. So I'm curious how you want to handle that in your motion. Do the parents get preference as well?
I said students, I meant students, not parents, not cousins, not college brothers and sisters, the student themselves.
All right, just wanted to clarify that. And then, so I can support the motion, but I do want to point out that it really isn't a substantive change, and maybe that's the point of the motion in any significant way. Because right now, people can designate themselves to only talk for a minute if they think they can get their time in. The CHIT lets you ask for 1 or 2 minutes. So the only real substantive change we're making, other than the student's priority, is letting people who've designated 1 minute go to the top of the line if they so choose, which at least, may or may not have the effect of shortening lengthy meetings. I have the unpleasant distinction of my very first meeting as mayor going till after 3 a.m. in the morning. And so I'm very sensitive to this issue because I do think that I am not in favor of doing anything to curtail anyone's time involuntarily to speak to us, or curtailing the methods by which they choose to speak to us. But I think I agree with what I heard from some of my colleagues, that having meetings that drag on till 11, midnight at night, are not only unfair for the people who are waiting to speak on those items, but frankly unfair to those items, because I can't speak for everyone here and some of us are more nocturnal than others. But the idea that we're going to have a coherent conversation about something at 1 or 2 in the morning when we all have day jobs is just not realistic. I mean, for example, this evening we started at 4:30. If we went till 2 in the morning, think of the hours that we would have been devoting to this, which we are all happy to do. But the idea that at 2 in the morning we might be deciding something that could definitely affect the governance of the city or the way people are treated within the city or whether or not a program continues or doesn't continue, for me is problematic. So I guess I am hoping that what I have heard is if this motion passes, and since there seems to be consensus that it probably will, that it be followed by some direction to the clerk and staff to perhaps re-examine some of the other proposals that were made, which might have a more significant effect on actually shortening those meetings where it looks like we're going to be asked to be here till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Because sometimes some of the most significant stuff that we hear, unfortunately, is at the end of the agenda, and or even on a 13 item perhaps. So I would just hope that at the end of this there might be some direction to bring it back. I think if we wait 6 months to a year, I don't think we're going to see any material difference. But if we were to, I just would like to have it be more immediate than sort of maybe after a year or two. So those are my thoughts. Councilmember Winterer.
I think maybe that meeting that you first chaired that went to 3 a.m., we started that one at 4:30. That was a humdinger. I have 2 thoughts in terms of direction. I'm not averse to the idea of if it works with people's work schedule, contemplating starting closed session a half hour earlier, just to, if we can all do that. But that'd be something staff would have to pull us on whether we thought that was workable or not. The other thought I have is this is maybe a far-fetched notion, but what if we did a review? You know, we have these slots. We put everything into the 4 slots, the 6 slots, the 8 slots. What if we did a review of the last 4 to 5 years of council meetings? The clerk keeps a record of how many people speak on each item, right? Isn't that correct? So we could do an analysis of which types of items brings out the most speakers, and then reconfigure our order of agenda items so that the type of item that generally brings out the most speakers goes earlier in the agenda. Mr. Cole will tell us nobody ever comes to us when we talk about the budget. We could always do the budget late at night. Well, you know what I mean. There are certain topics that we just know certain people more. I mean, it's generally probably ordinances, especially when we're doing all those development agreements. But we could do sort of an aggressive analysis of what sort of items are most likely to bring the public out, and if the concern is the public and their ability to have input on these things, we could do those things earlier. So that's just a thought.
Well, and I just want to respond to that by saying, and with all due respect, Councilmember, that's exactly my point, is the last thing we want to be doing it too. You know, let's say we have something, we all know animals brings people out. Let's say we're going to change some animal regulation. We'll get 40, 50 people out. If you remember when there was contemplation of exterminating squirrels on the bluffs, that was a very long meeting. So on a night when we have squirrels and the budget, we'll do squirrels early in the meeting when everyone's fresh, and we'll do our $750 million budget at 2 a.m. So I'm not suggesting that that's not a good idea, but what I am suggesting is I think that there are more things than just, I mean, public input is very important, getting people out of here at a reasonable hour is important, but I really do think the other thing we need to think about is how realistic it is for us to be thinking about important items when we're all, you know, at the end of our long day. So I'm still going to be supporting the motion, and I think we'll open it up to direction after we take a vote on the motion. Councilmember Himmelrich, we'll let you close out since you made the motion, but I'd like to get to a vote.
I actually want to note that I agree with Councilmember Winter that knowing which items generally, and not specifically like animal items, but whether there's a category of item, be it ordinances or be it administrative items that bring out more speakers and inspire more public discussion, that those should be earlier in the meeting. I'm not suggesting that we move the budget back for squirrels, but I am suggesting that we have some idea of what speakers seem most interested in over time and have those earlier. I think that we signed up for this job, and I disagree with the mayor. I believe that putting 1-minute items first may be an adequate carrot to shorten our meetings.
All right. Well, let's take a vote.
Councilmember Morena.
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich.
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown.
Yes.
Councilmember Winter.
Yes.
Councilmember Hara.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day.
Oh, all right, yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes. That motion carries unanimously. Councilmember McEwen, you.
Well, now I think
request
what
to
we should
speak?
do is offer staff some direction, because clearly staff made multiple recommendations because they feel, and perhaps rightly so, that just what we did tonight won't in time turn out to be enough. And I think we're right to take this incrementally, but we'd be wrong to drop it at that point and say, oh, we've done all we can do. I think reordering the items on the agenda is an interesting concept. It should be noted, however, that we've done that a number of times in the past. If you want to go back and look at the agendas for the council in the 1990s, for instance, you'll see they were in a very different sequence. So we've tried to adjust our agendas to make it possible for the most people to speak on items, but that may have changed in the past 5 or 10 years. So let's take a look at that. I think the idea that at some point an item becomes so long in terms of public testimony that the individual time per speaker has to be adjusted is one that we have to investigate. It may turn out to be the only way, really, to keep the meetings manageable. As I said before, I think that the numbers suggested to us by staff may have been too much too soon. We may want to adjust slowly and see what the impact is. For instance, I heard the point that if there's one long item, it could keep people on other short items from having as much time to speak as they should have, and I tend to agree with that. So I would give the direction that staff first look at setting a limit on how many speakers per item should trigger a reduction in speaking time. And it might not be 15, it might be 20, it might be 25. And whether that reduction in speaking time should truly be a halving of it from 2 minutes to 1 minute. Maybe it goes to 90 seconds. Maybe we start with minor adjustments to see what the impact is. We can't keep meeting till 2:40 in the morning. We know that. We also don't want to unnecessarily restrict the public speakers in any way. So we're looking for a balance, and I would ask as a direction that staff help us investigate what that balance might be and bring us in that direction, incremental step by step.
All right. Anyone? Councilmember Morena.
I agree with Kevin, but I also think Councilmember Winter's suggestion is very well put. We said it before. I just want to make it official in the discussion portion of this item. However we can time slot, however we can give better direction, reorganize, aggressively study. My guess is that even after this, being a numbers guy myself, you could probably study the impacts of moving and trying to incentivize people to speak for 1 minute at the beginning of council. And so we can potentially run that scenario for 3 months, 6 months, see if there's any time savings, and then report back. I think there should be this analysis, but then also a periodic check-in so that we're constantly being efficient.
All right, so did you just buzz it? Councilmember McEwen?
I just wanted to add something to my direction to make it clear that the intent here and the metric by which staff should evaluate the options we're asking for is not the convenience of council or staff, but the ability for people in the community who, because of jobs or children, can't stay till 2 in the morning to be adequately, fairly, and equitably heard by this city council. That is what I'm interested in.
All right, Councilmember Winterer.
Yeah, I think we heard a lot of ideas here, and I just hope that the staff heard all of them and will think about it, because I agree. I think we've made a step forward, but there's more work to be done, but I think we're all reluctant to make dramatic change at this point, so we'll see how this incremental change goes, and hopefully we can come back and sometime and evaluate the success of what we've done tonight and contemplate different approaches to make the meetings more productive for everyone involved.
All right, does staff understand the direction? All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item 8B.
Item 8B is proposed affordable housing at 1834 through 1848 14th Street, and you have 5 requests to speak.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Jim Kemper from Housing and Economic Development Department. The item before you involves a proposed housing trust fund loan for the future development of affordable housing in the 1800 block of 14th Street. To start, I wanted to provide some brief context about how the city goes about funding affordable housing. The city has several housing trust funds which it uses to loan to nonprofits to create affordable housing. The main funding sources are a transaction and use tax adopted by Santa Monica voters in November 2016, known as Measure GSH. Another important source are loan repayments to the city from the former redevelopment agency that the council has dedicated for affordable housing purposes. And another source of development impact fees, such as housing in lieu fees and commercial mitigation fees. The first and current Housing Trust Fund plan was adopted by Council last year in July, and that plan establishes priorities for affordable housing and annual reporting requirements. It also aligns with the term of the housing element, which goes through 2021. The main gist of the Housing Trust Fund plan is the allocation of equal funding among the 4 groups you see on the screen. One group is a person living with disabilities and persons experiencing homelessness. That's one group. Second group is seniors, third group is large families, and fourth group is small families and individuals. There's also a policy document that originated in the 1980s, has been updated and amended and approved by council on several occasions since then. The guidelines establish loan limits and loan terms. It also provides an administrative approval process for funding of loans when they are consistent with the guidelines as set forth in the guidelines. A few of the main goals to mention, there are targeted, deep targeting of affordable housing is one of the goals, leveraging non-city funds such as federal low-income housing tax credits and state affordable housing funds. And another important goal is geographic dispersion of affordable housing opportunities throughout the city. To illustrate what the city with its nonprofit partners have been able to accomplish over the last several decades, there's a map on the screen that shows that affordable housing is dispersed in most of the neighborhoods throughout the city. The lightly shaded areas are the single-family zones that do not allow multifamily housing. The reason we're here is because the guidelines stipulate that funding for a development that would involve more than 50 apartments must be approved by the city council. So the proposed loan that is before you this evening it would involve approximately 55 residences, therefore requiring council approval. The proposed loan is otherwise consistent with the guidelines. With respect to the specifics of the proposal before you, the borrower would be the Community Corporation of Santa Monica. The funds would be used to acquire a few parcels on at 1834 to 1848 14th Street and then develop affordable housing there. The city loan amount would be within the guidelines already established, within the limits, already established within the guidelines, and staff currently estimates that total city loan amount would be around $15 million. There would be a wide range of affordability at this development, actually targeting households at the 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, and 80% of area median income. There's also a mix of there would be, this is just a conceptual development at this time, I should point out, but would be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments that would serve also a range of households, such as individuals, small families, and large families. The proposed loan would increase the affordable housing supply for extremely low income, very low income, and low income households. It would leverage approximately $25 million in private tax credit equity and a bank loan. And it would further the goals with respect to the housing element quantified objectives, the spending priorities in the Housing Trust Fund plan, and the affordability mandate of Proposition R. We'll close with highlighting the main staff recommendations. First, that the council approve a loan for a development that would involve more than 50 apartments, so long as the loan amount is within the limits established by the Housing Trust Fund guidelines. Number 2, that a developer fee of $19,379 per apartment be allowed, which would equate to approximately $1,066,000 for a 55 apartment development. One clarification I would like to make is that the staff is not recommending that any portion of the developer fee be deferred and paid with rental income, as the staff report incorrectly alludes to. We are recommending that the developer fee payments be made consistent with the protocols and the guidelines, which has 3 milestones for the payment of a developer fee for new construction. And lastly, staff recommends that in exchange for this Housing Trust Fund loan, that the apartments be occupied, the apartments be filled from households who are on a city maintained waiting list, which prioritizes the housing for households that live and work for residents and folks who work in Santa Monica. That concludes my presentation. Staff is here to answer any questions you have, and I believe the development director from Community Corp is here as well if you have any questions for Community Corp.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Himmelrich.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, on the developer fee, in the staff report, it said that they were requesting a higher developer fee and it wasn't expressed in the per apartment. So is this a developer fee you were recommending in the staff report?
Correct.
Okay, and my second question is this, local priority. I understand that there are two lists, both a city-administered list and a list administered by CCSM. Has CCSM agreed to take only from the city-administered list?
Yes, they have.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Hara.
I actually had a similar question as to the list and whether or not you could provide us with when in the past we have had residents to be preferential and whether or not they have been placed, okay? And that's my first question. And the other one is, did you use any data for the breakdown, or how did we come about with this breakdown of how we would do the housing units?
First, to respond to the list, the city-administered list would prioritize households that live or work in Santa Monica. It's an equal preference. Usually the list is quite long enough and we would not get to a point where there's households who do not meet either of those criteria. With respect to the housing mix, Community Corp may want to speak to that a little bit. Is a mix of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom units, and as I mentioned, a range of affordability. I think it's an attempt to try to serve as many different household types as possible, from individual households to large family households.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll get to the public input. I will call out, we have 5 people, so I'm going to call out all 5 names. Please line up along the wall to your left so we can move from one speaker to another efficiently. Paul Newman, Jerry Manpearl, Jan Goodman, William Ryan, and Jesus Hernandez.
Hello.
Good evening.
I'm here to yield. Actually, I was doing it with 13F with Diablo nuclear power plant issues.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did they put 8?
Yeah, it says 8B on each of these chips.
Right, and hi, nice to meet you. Finally.
So you want to be on which item? The Diablo Canyon one?
Yeah, 13F is
All
one
right.
I was going to talk about.
All right, well, we'll call you back up with 13F then. All right. I don't see Jerry Manpearl.
Oh, Jerry Manpearl, I told him back there that he's not coming, but
Okay.
obviously didn't get here.
All right. Ms. Goodman.
Yes, I support the staff recommendation entirely with regard to the development of affordable housing in this case, and Community Corps in general has really contributed to Santa Monica and the vitality of our community. So this is one more step in that direction, and I support it entirely and hope that you do also. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Mr. Ryan.
I support this resolution. Hope you do.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Jesus Hernandez. I'm the Director of Housing for Community Corp. Thanks so much for taking up the action today. We, of course, support the development of affordable housing, and I'm here for both. Any questions specifically to the development, and also ask if there's any consideration around a modest increase to the proposed developer fee as well. That helps to keep our doors open, and that's our main source of generating income. So to the extent that could be a discussion, that'll be wonderful. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez? Councilmember Winter, I believe, has a question.
I'm just hoping you could answer Councilmember Hart's question about how you arrived at the particular mix of units and affordability.
That's a great question. So around the income, that's a prescribed system that comes from both the city and the federal low-income housing tax credit product. So it's basically between 30 and 80% that the system works under. So in terms of the unit mix, it's a couple of factors. One is around we are allowed so much in FAR, or floor area ratio, so we want to maximize that to the extent we can. So sometimes we have to include 1-bedrooms to increase the bedroom sizes and unit sizes. Also, we have, I think, 50% 2- and 3-bedroom units that are really meant for large families. That's been the population that we serve historically. We could also put a small family in a 1-bedroom. So I think it does help to provide housing for all family types.
Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me. Mayor.
Yes.
We have Ms. Reason here who wants to speak, who wants 1 minute on this.
All right, that would be a late chit.
Move here for 1 minute.
All right, see no objection. Ms. Reason for 1 minute.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to tell you that I am a beneficiary of this housing, and I think that CCSM does an amazing job. And the people who live in the building where I live, many of them are local workers who could not afford to live in Santa Monica if it were not for CCSM, and a lot of people with disabilities, et cetera. I don't know if I would qualify to get in now. I did lose my housing in Santa Monica years ago, and then I got back in, but I don't know if the list administered by the city would have taken that into account. So I maintained my post office box, but I don't think I would have managed to get back to Santa Monica if I had been required to be working in Santa Monica at the time. So I just wanted to say that.
All right, thank you very much. That closes the public hearing. The matter is before the council. Councilmember Winterer.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
All right, moved by Winterer. Councilmember Himmelrich, did you want to speak?
I second it.
All right, well, I did hear that, but okay. Councilmember Hara.
I'm sorry, I still have a question which I would like to see if we can have answered. Does CCSM have any statistics for the past 2 years as to when residents were allocated?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Do you have any statistics as for the past maybe 2 years when Santa Monica residents were actually allocated into your units?
I don't have that in front of me, but I'll be happy to look up that and return with an answer.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. And in one of your, I think that in your recommendations, you wanted to have 2 community meetings for this development to listen to the communities. Might I suggest that you up that by 2 and maybe have 4 to have
4?
more participation?
Sure. We consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further speakers in the queue, we have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation moved by Winterer, seconded by Himmelrich. May we have a vote, Ms. Anderson-Warren?
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Morena?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously.
Next, we have appointments to boards and commissions. The first one is for one unscheduled vacancy on the Building and Life Fire Safety Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2021. And you have
Councilmember
no request to
McEwen?
speak.
This particular commission has specific requirements, and it looks to me as if we do not yet have an applicant who fulfills those requirements, so I will move that we continue this.
And I'll second that because that's what I was going to say.
All right, I think we can do that by voice vote. Move to continue this item due to a lack of qualified applicants. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. We'll continue it. Ms. Anderson-Warren, let me ask you a question, because this is not the first time we've encountered this issue with this particular commission. Is there any sort of outreach we can do to professional groups that we haven't thought of already to try and get a qualified
We actually have reached
applicant?
out to several professional groups. We've spoken with the planning commissioner. We've reached out to people who previously were on the commission. and with no success.
All right, well, I guess I mean, our next meeting's in a week. Continuing it to a week doesn't suggest to me we're going to have any applicants in the coming
I'll
time.
modify my motion to be continued to the second meeting in March.
Is that friendly to the seconder?
Yes.
All right, just for procedural sake, since we already voted, let's vote again. The motion has been amended to move it to the second meeting in March. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No. All right, we will revisit this issue on the second meeting in March. And for those of you who know anyone who meets the qualifications for the Fire and Life Safety Commission, please let them know we have an opening, and I'm sure it's a great, fun commission to be on. All right, may we call the next item, please?
Next, we
You
have
get
the-
to go to a dinner in April. Let's dangle that out there.
That's right, free food.
So next, we have an appointment to one scheduled vacancy on the Audit Subcommittee for a term ending July 30th, 2021. And you have no request to speak on that one.
All right.
I nominate, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I nominate Jeff Bush.
And I nominate Natalia Zernitskaya.
No others?
All right, that seems like those are our choices. Can we have a vote?
Councilmember Moreno?
Natalia.
Councilmember Kim?
Oh, you meant Councilmember Himmerich.
What is she, chopped liver?
Well, no, I jumped. Councilmember Himmerich?
Bush.
Councilmember McKeown?
Zernitskaya.
Councilmember Winter?
Zernitskaya.
Councilmember Hara?
Zernitskaya.
And Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Natalia.
And Mayor Davis.
Zernitskaya. All right,
I
that.
move we combine the votes for Natalia and Zernitskaya.
All right. And call us all chicken out for refusing to pronounce either the first or last name.
And I will change my vote to Zernitskaya.
All right, then it's by acclamation. Ms. Zernitskaya, welcome aboard to the Audit Committee.
Next, we have the appointment to one unscheduled vacancy for the Personnel Board for a term ending July 30th, 2022. And you have no request to speak.
All right, do we have any nominations?
I nominate Oma Moj, I can never say her last name, so Mojtabai.
All right, Councilmember Winterer?
I'll nominate Shalon Zephyrjan.
All right, we'll have a vote.
This is pronunciation challenge evening, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Alma?
I'm going with that.
Councilmember Hara?
Alma.
Councilmember Winter?
Zephyrjan.
Councilmember McKeown?
Mojtabai.
Councilmember Himmerich?
Oma. Thank you.
And Councilmember Morena?
Homa. Mojtabai.
It's Homa.
Homa?
Homa Mojtabai.
So I've been calling her the wrong name for 2 years now. Huh? Oh, well.
Okay. And Mayor Davis?
Mochabai. All right.
Okay.
So, Ms. Mochabai, welcome.
And I'll change my vote, so it's...
All right. Then by unanimous vote, Ms. Mochabai, welcome to the Personnel Board.
Okay.
For the record, it was years before anybody could pronounce McKeown, so don't feel bad.
I still can't pronounce it. What do you mean?
Thank you for advising about this, Councilmember McCown.
Okay, next we have appointment to one unscheduled vacancy for the Commission on the Status of Women for a term ending June 30th, 2021, and you have no request to speak.
I nominate Jacqueline Pepper.
Nominate Jennifer Eden.
I'd like to nominate Shalon Zephyrjan.
So you said Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Hara?
I'd like to nominate Jenny Vasquez Naselma.
How is this going to work?
Somehow I don't think anybody's going to get it in the first round.
I think we're going to end up on a second round, but let's see.
Okay, Mayor O'Day.
Mayor?
I'm sorry,
You've been
Mayor Pro Tem
promoted.
O'Day.
That's
I'm
how it's
sorry.
gonna work.
That's not even late. And he's like, Mayor?
Here you
Just
go.
get used
I
to
got
it.
some cards for you.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day.
Eden.
Councilmember Hara.
Jenny Vasquez.
Councilmember Winter.
Vasquez Newsom.
Councilmember McKeown?
Pepper.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Vasquez Newsom.
Councilmember Morena?
Eden.
Mayor Davis?
Zephyr John.
Okay.
I'll change my vote to Vasquez Newsom.
All right, as will I.
Okay.
And me.
Me too.
All right, then unanimously, Ms. Vasquez Newsom, welcome to the Commission on the Status of Women. Happy Women's History Month.
Okay, so next we have item 3E, which is request of Councilmember Hara, Morena, and Winter that the City Council allocate $10,000 of discretionary funds to the JAM Science Magnet, a 501c3, to provide financial assistance for students who demonstrated need to travel in June for the annual Japan Exchange Program. And you have one request to speak.
All right, Councilmember Winterer.
Well, so this is one of those things we've done on a regular basis. We got a very compelling letter, very thorough, from the Jam Science Magnet advocates. They've used these funds wisely over the years to enable low-income kids from low-income households to participate on this trip they do to Japan, and I think it's entirely in line with the sort of thing this council has supported in the past.
All right, Councilmember Morena.
I just want to mention that I'm an alumni of John Adams. This was before we called it JAMS, and we didn't have programs like this when I was there. So we've come a long way, and I commend you guys for getting us there, and I'm happy to sit next to you and be able to do it. So thank you.
Right,
Once a Viking.
You have to donate your personal funds. That's what you have to do.
If they'd had this program, you might not have ended up a council member. I'm sorry it's come to this.
That's right. Well, there you go. We do have one speaker. Let's hear from Laura Ford, please.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I am a parent of an 8th grader at JAMS. I also have a 9th grader at Santa Monica High School. My 9th grader went last year. I can speak that it's an amazing program. He came back really a different guy. My 8th grader was so excited about that he's applying for it. I am here really to offer answer any questions you have. I'm not here to advocate for myself because we're fortunate to be able to afford it, but it's wonderful. What I love about JAMS is we have these great programs that are for every child in the community, and it's an amazing program. So thank you for your past support, and I hope you'll consider supporting us this year.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ford. Councilmember Winterer.
I'll move we allocate the $10,000 as specified in the agenda item.
Second. Nope. Moved by Winterer, seconded by Davis. I just had to get in there since Mayor Pro Tem O'Day was trying to usurp my power there. All right. Let's have a roll call vote since we are talking about some money here.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Day?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Morena?
Absolutely.
Mayor Davis?
Yes, that passes unanimously. And we look forward to hearing all about the trip when the students return.
Next, we have item 13F, Council Members McKeown, Himmelrich, and Morena, that council directs staff to prepare for Mayor Davis's signature a letter in keeping with the city's existing policy against investment in nuclear energy and the Clean Power Alliance's firm commitment against including any nuclear power, even in the non-renewable sourced electricity CPA purchases, calling on Governor Newsom to secure the ongoing safety of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant by mandating complete and comprehensive testing of unaddressed safety concerns, including vulnerability to seismic activity, aging internal infrastructure, and improper storage and disposal of nuclear waste before PG&E is allowed to restart the Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor after the current refueling outage. And you have 7 requests to speak.
And before Councilmember McKeown introduces the item, I have 2 chits from Mr. Newman. One is donating time and the other is requesting to speak. Right. You can't do both. You either donate or you speak. Which one are you choosing? All right, good. Just wanted to clear that up. All right, thank you very much. Councilmember McEwen.
Just a few hundred miles up the delicate and beautiful California coast from Santa Monica is the last remaining nuclear power plant in all of California. It's called Diablo Canyon, and it is operated by Pacific Gas and Electric, which is an investor-owned utility, which, as most of us know, has just gone bankrupt. Now, one of the 2 reactors on that site is currently closed for refueling. During the time that it is closed, it's the opportune moment to check that reactor, which is quite old, for embrittlement and other infrastructure damage that may have occurred before it started back up. So what I'm asking the council to do tonight is something that other cities have done, that our state senator Ben Allen has done, many individuals have done, which is to communicate to Governor Newsom our desire that before PG&E be allowed to restart that nuclear plant, that it be thoroughly inspected by a neutral third party, preferably not the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is sort of like the fox in the henhouse, but somebody other than that who can really tell us whether it is safe to restart that plant. Many of us feel it's not safe in any condition, but we do want that checked. And the request here would just be that the council authorize Mayor Davis to send a letter similar to the one that our state senator Ben Allen sent, which is in the packet.
All right. We'll begin the public comment. Sir, I'm not sure you're up yet. You'll have to wait your turn. We
Okay.
actually have an order here.
Okay.
I'm going to call speakers in the order, and we'll ask you to line up along the wall so you can be ready to speak when it is your turn. Mila Reason, Jonathan Foster, Jerry Manpearl. Oh, we already established Jerry has gone home. Is that correct? All right, so we'll skip Jerry. We'll go directly to Jan Goodman. And then we have Mr. Newman donating 2 minutes to Harvey Wasserman, William Ryan, and Jerry Rubin. Yes, Mila's first.
I'm sorry, Janet. I was trying to collect my thoughts. Hello again. So thank you, Councilmember McEwen and Sue Himmelrich and Greg Marino for introducing this very important legislation. I've been compiling resolutions and letters from various Democratic clubs and caucuses throughout the state, and there are a lot of people who have weighed in on this very important issue. I would like to say that not only is this up to the governor at this point, but also the CPUC and the California Energy Commission and a couple of bankruptcy judges, one of which, Judge Alsup, when he talked to PG&E about their liability with the last forest fire that killed so many people did Trump call it paradise? It confused me. But anyway, he said, how many more people should we allow PG&E to kill? And I think that that's really the question. We are downwind and of this very embrittled nuclear power plant. And the last time the industry standard is to test every 10 years, but in November of 2011, PG&E contacted the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and asked if they could put off the scheduled 10-year test for an additional 10 years, and that would happen in 2022. The reactor at Unit 1 was deemed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to be one of the 5 most embrittled reactors of all of the 100 reactors in the United States. It's really threatening us all with excess, and the energy is excess energy that can be replaced by renewables. They've already admitted that in public testimony, they being PG&E. So thank you for doing this and for joining all of the other organizations and elected officials who have already weighed in. Thank you.
All right, looks like Councilmember McEwen. Ms. Reason?
Yeah, Ms. Reason.
Ms. Reason?
Quick question.
Councilmember McEwen has a question.
Since I put this on the agenda, I heard that it was possible that Governor Newsom was going to make a statement or take some action either yesterday or today. Do you know if that happened?
As far as I know, he did not. Although he did write a letter to someone we know saying that he was going to issue a statement yesterday. As far as I know, he met with Nancy Pelosi instead.
So our letter is still timely then. Good. Thank you.
But I don't know if it was about this. But as far as I know, he has not yet issued a statement, although we understand that
Got
his
it.
plan was to do that yesterday.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Foster. Thank you, Ms. Reason.
Hi. All great ideas for energy are deliberately suppressed. The nuclear energy is terrible, and PG&E should be shut down and Diablo never restarted. Solar panels put in space, one day's sun powers the whole planet for a year. You just beam the energy down to Earth through the ionosphere. No wires, no heat, no fires. Full battery charges for cell phones are currently being sent to cell phones, so the whole idea is suppressed. I was born in Okinawa, Japan, and I have always felt close to ending nuclear power because of the bombs that were dropped on Japan. But in the Nevada desert, the United States military dropped over 150 nuclear bombs out there. Fukushima nuclear disaster should be the indicator that tells us all the reason for no nuclear power, and even Donald Trump is talking to the North Koreans about ending the nuclear power. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Ms. Goodman?
Would it be possible for me to switch my time with Harvey Wasserman, Professor Wasserman? Is that
Sure.
possible?
That's fine.
Thank you.
We're trying to be flexible here.
Do I have 4 minutes?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So this is an ongoing situation, very, very dangerous. And it's not going to end with this letter to Gavin Newsom, which is greatly appreciated and will have an impact. Gavin did correspond with someone close to him and close to us that he was going to do something Monday. That didn't happen. He went to see Donald Trump yesterday. He went to see Nancy Pelosi. At some point, he'll intervene. But it's a very difficult situation. So your letter will have an impact, but we have to be on the case further. There are 7 major issues that we're raising with PG&E, which is not only bankrupt, but under criminal prosecution. It's one of the only corporations I've ever heard of that has an actual parole officer. We are writing the parole officer. He has said publicly, his name is William Alsop. How many more people do I have to let you kill? So we're sending amicus briefs to him. We're also sending personal letters. And Gavin's power in this may be limited. We're not sure. It's primarily political. We're hoping for resolutions in the state legislature to add to the ones from the various towns, counties, Democratic clubs, and other organizations that have been sending things in. We also have 1,000 signatures on a Move On petition. So the key 7 issues, very quickly, because I expect this to go on for a while. Embrittlement, which means that the key metals in the reactor have undergone chemical change, and if, God forbid, there's an accident and they pour in water, the reactor pressure vessel will shatter like glass instead of holding its shape, which it needs to do. If that happens, God forbid, we're looking at a Chernobyl or a Fukushima, about a little under 200 miles as the crow flies from here, or as the radiation flies, and the damage would be inestimable. We are also concerned about cracking. Cracking does occur in these internals, and it can be checked. It's well known with ultrasound. In addition, PG&E has been deferring vital maintenance. To save money, they just don't do stuff. And this is what led to them blowing up 19 homes and killing 8 people in San Bruno in 2010, which led to the criminal prosecution, and now burning down a very substantial part of Northern California and killing more than 80 people and burning 10,000 structures. This is the kind of company we're dealing with here. There's also very clear indication that there's seismic vulnerability. Unit 1, which is shut now, although maybe only until March 7th, we're concerned about that, was put in place before they knew that there were a dozen earthquake faults there. So the earthquake faults were not taken into account of the design and construction of the plant. We're also concerned about waste management. The waste management at San Onofre is an absolute nightmare, and we think it's going to be even worse at Diablo Canyon. Finally, we're concerned about, of course, PG&E's abilities to operate 2 big nuclear power plants. The congressman from San Luis Obispo, Raul Carbajal, has actually come out and made a public statement saying he doesn't think that PG&E is capable of running these 2 reactors. And I think he's 100% right. And finally, we actually do not need the power from Diablo Canyon. It's shut now, the lights are on, and they will be on. In fact, the grid, for various reasons, is better off without the power from Diablo Canyon because there's a surplus of power on the grid. And when the 2 reactors are operating, they actually force wind and solar facilities to shut down. So we're better off, really, if Diablo 1 never reopens, and when Diablo 2 goes down for refueling, that it stays shut as well. There is a deal that they will shut in 24 and 25. We want them shut earlier, and we want these 7 major contentions to deal with. This will help. This is a good thing to do, to send it to the governor. I hope you'll be prepared to send additional resolutions to the legislature and other judicial bodies. Okay?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Goodman?
Yes. I wanted to address a couple of things. One is the cost of the saving of the cost of the nuclear fuel that is, if it does not go back in to these plants, it's going to be a savings to PG&E, which is ultimately people who are citizens. It will be savings of approximately $30 million that will be able to go somewhere else, because once the quote virgin nuclear fuel goes into the plant, it cannot be resold. But as long as it hasn't been entered into the nuclear plant, it'll be another way. It'll be a savings for PG&E and ultimately the ratepayers. And addressing the point that Mr. Wasserman just made, I would request that perhaps the City Council could amend the resolution to add that this letter be sent to others in addition to Governor Newsom, that it be sent to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and also to the judge in the bankruptcy case and Judge Alsop in the probation case. And I'm not sure if Professor Wasserman made it clear what that other case was about. It's relating to the deaths that occurred because PG&E was negligent in maintaining its gas pipes, and those exploded and caused these deaths. And in addition, they were also negligent, and their wires went down, and those caused the fires many of the fires that raged.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Mr. Ryan?
Thank you. The little slip of the tongue on the word outrage and outage is, I think, appropriate and telling. And Professor Wasserman, in his limited time, didn't have a chance to mention that PG&E has its own probation officer, possibly the only corporation in the country with its own probation officer. I can't imagine that you're going to vote against this, so all I want to say is time truly is of the essence in this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jerry Rubin?
Thanks again, Mayor Davis, Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica. I want to thank Council members McKeown, Himmelrich, and Marina for bringing this timely and important issue up. I'm glad that ultimately San Onofre and Diablo Canyon are going to be gone, but this is very important to act on now. I would also get a letter to our Senators Feinstein and Kamala Harris, along with Newsom and the others that are suggested. I know there's a big push still to bring back nuclear power. I'm even seeing bumper stickers now that say another environmentalist for nuclear power. Very deceptive. People trying to trick people into thinking this is going to benefit climate change. You know, there's so many health problems with it, as you all know, from the mining, milling, and processing of the uranium. We still don't know what to do with the nuclear waste, on and on and on. I'm glad the city is not going to be dealing with nuclear power and even natural gas now. So it might cost a little bit more, but it's really worth it to start using that kind of energy. So I just want to say thank you very much, and all the people that have been working on saying no nukes for years. We used to have a bumper sticker that said better active today than radioactive tomorrow. Maybe we need to bring that one back by popular demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes, I would like to add the additional suggestions to the motion that we send the letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Judge Alsop and the judge in the bankruptcy, who I see as Judge Montali, Montali.
Okay, I'm sorry, this isn't interactive at this point, so we need you all to we're discussing it now.
And with those additions, I move this item.
I second that. Would like to speak to it.
All right, Councilmember McEwen?
So earlier tonight, Council, we adopted city investment guidelines that prohibit our holding stock in nuclear power. And as touched on in the item description on the agenda, the Clean Power Alliance, of which we're a part, does not and will not buy any nuclear power ever. The last remaining nuclear power plant in California is on the coast, and a threat to Santa Monica if it should, after refueling, fail. So I will support this motion. As I understand it, the letter will be sent by Mayor Davis to Governor Newsom, the CPUC, the NRC, and the judges in the PG&E bankruptcy case. Is that
and Judge Alsop, he's the criminal judge.
And to another judge whose name I didn't quite get.
We know who he is.
And let's send it to the parole officer too.
I think that is Judge Alsop. Judge Alsop's
So that's my second.
And he's a probation officer. He's not a parole officer. PG&E's on probation. They were not in prison and then released. All right. So do we have the motion, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
All right. I think we can do this via voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. That motion carries unanimously.
Next, we have 13G, request of Mayor Davis and Council Members McKeown and Hara that the council authorize up to $100,000 of council discretionary funds to create a local well-being summit, describing and demonstrating our important work around community well-being here in Santa Monica and its recognized impact as part of the global well-being movement, with the intent to seek philanthropic funding that could reduce significantly the city cost of the Wellbeing Summit, which will be open and free to residents and will offer concrete opportunities for them to improve their own well-being and that of our community. And you have no request to speak.
All right, thank you. I think I'll start this one off. As I mentioned earlier in the evening, I have recently been to Dubai, and the reason that as a representative of the city, and the reason the city of Santa Monica was invited to attend the World Government Summit in Dubai is because we have been internationally recognized for declaring ourselves a sustainable city of well-being and actually doing concrete work around that declaration. When we initially established our 5 strategic priorities, learning and thriving were one of them, and as we transitioned to the budgetary framework priorities, an engaged and thriving community remained one of those. For those who don't know, that we were recently declared in an international competition one of the finalists for being a well-being city of 2019. So we're doing important work in this area, but I think that one of the issues that we have, and this is one of the issues the summit is meant to address, is that people don't understand what we mean when we talk about well-being. The international movement around this originally started talking about happiness, and people were like, oh, well, you're going to try and make me happy? Go ahead, give it a try. And then we moved to the language of well-being, which has a health context to it, you know, whether it's mental health or physical health. And so we haven't necessarily been able to explain, I think, to all of our constituents the work, important work, that's been going on in this community around the concept of well-being. And at our next meeting, we'll be recognizing some of the people who participated in our very successful micro grant program, which was part of our well-being efforts. So having said all that, the idea is to have a summit, for lack of a better term, around the idea of well-being, to explain the work we're doing, why it's important. Our hope is that we will have some outstanding experts in the field. We've had interest in attending from a number of people. I don't want to name names because I don't want to commit, but a number of people who are working on this at a global level with a number of federal, national governments, as well as non-governmental agencies, and coming and talking to us. But more importantly, the idea is for people to leave the summit with concrete action plans about what they can do, not only to improve their own well-being, but the well-being of the larger community. As the item states, it would be free for attendance. And the other thing for people to know is it says up to $100,000. Our hope is that by making an initial expenditure and creating sort of a concrete plan for the well-being summit, that we would be able then to go out and seek philanthropic and other financial support, so that we actually may be able to reduce the financial commitment that's necessary by the city to put this summit on. So that's the item. Councilmember Marina.
Thank you for this. I just wanted a little color around it, mostly because I just don't know how it works. I understand the money to John Adams because they're going to Japan. This item, I know we also have it as part of our framework. We have a department that reports to our city manager's office. It sounds like a great idea, and I love
actually a division.
Division, sorry. I love the idea of risk capital, skin in the game to raise more money. I think that's the way to do it. But how does it work operationally? Does that go through communications? This has been a big initiative of mine, and so I just want to know kind of the mechanics of it and how you guys actually get it done.
I'm happy to address it, or actually, I know our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Lichtig's been working on it, so maybe I'll let her jump in there.
So the Office of Civic Wellbeing actually is part of the City Manager's office. It's headed by Julie Rusk, and the team of the Civic Wellbeing team has started to put some thoughts around what this might look like, and so they would be the group that would operationalize it. We don't have the capacity to do this all on our own, and some of the funding would go towards helping to produce something of this scope and scale, in addition to trying to find the grantees that might be interested, or other philanthropic organizations that would have an interest in supporting this type of endeavor. And so operationally, it would be through the City Manager's office, through the Office of Civic Wellbeing.
So, one of our investment policies, I think it's 17F, contains a community benefit component. And so this very much seems in that light, in that we're trying to stoke the community benefit. If we were creating an initiative and we wanted to get grant money to match, or we wanted to create an outlook to engage more people, we'd put a marketing plan together, and this is like a supplemental component to the division. So it seems totally appropriate. I'd love to, whether this gets included annually as part of a ongoing piece. We've invested a lot of time and money into well-being, and it sounds like, we're putting a little more gas in the tank. And I just want to be conscious of that and, have set this up for success. And look at it as something that we're continuing to invest in and that we're committing to on the council, but would love to see some sort of measurable components to it, so that we know that we're gaining traction. We know that people understand what well-being means. We know that it's sinking in, and that we have some determinable factor to say that we were successful.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense. I think one of the things that my conversations with Ms. Lichtig and Ms. Rusk have been around is it's not just going to be another day of talking heads. There will be some talking heads, because we're going to talk about, I think when people hear about the international work that's going on around this topic, they'll actually be quite excited to see that we're in the forefront of it. We're not following, we're leading. but it does have a concrete component about giving people action items. So that would be a metric that we could use, is how many people took those action items, took them back to their community. You know, did we see more, everything from block parties to micro grant applications, whatever. As we sort of build on that, we can start to see whether it's successful, and then if it's successful, we can build upon that further. Councilmember McEwen.
When Mayor Davis first brought this up to me, one of the things that I talked about that has now been included is making sure that there was resident participation in this and that a benefit to our community came out of holding this summit. 4 or 5 years ago when I was mayor, we had the first meeting about a well-being snapshot. And in retrospect, I realized the room was full of staff and policy wonks, but it was kind of light on residents who really are the beneficiaries of these policies that we're developing. So this will be an opportunity for people who live in Santa Monica, work in Santa Monica, are part of our community, to really understand how these programs can and will benefit them and how they can contribute to the well-being of our community. So I think we're going to make sure this is a very inclusive event, which not everything we've done about well-being has been up till now. And I am happy to move this if it's not yet been moved. So I'll make a motion that we authorize this expenditure.
All right, moved by McEwen.
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Morena. Councilmember Hara.
I think that in talking about the opportunities, I think it might be a good idea for us to also include some of those opportunities already in here. Councilmember McEwen brought up some of the micro grants. I think that the well-being has been like really successful over in the Pico neighborhood, but there are some, I guess, dreams that the community set forth in one of our well-being participations at Virginia Avenue Park, when we started looking at what we used to have and what we would like to have. And so I think it might be a good idea for us to look at some of those ideas that the community has suggested for us to have. I know that some of the community members have also been looking forward to moving up the micro grants to macro grants. And I would like to see if we could include a partial amount of this to be invested into macro grants. There are, as you stipulated, you know, a lot of people don't want to see just a speaking meeting. They want actual concrete measures there that we can go ahead and provide for them. So I would like to move that maybe we have half of the funding be allocated for some of those measures that the community might already foresee then.
I'm speaking as the maker of the motion.
Sure.
What I think would work in the spirit of the motion and still get done what needs to get done is that the council allocate the $100,000, that we seek the matching funds and grants from outside to help pay for the event, and that whatever amount of that $100,000 is not used because we find the outside grants be set aside to be used for micro or macro grants within the community.
I would be in favor of that.
And I'll modify the motion to state that. Is it okay with the seconder?
I would second that.
All right, and can I also just point out that actually the micro grants were not funded, they were funded by a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So maybe as we go out and try and seek grant and other funding around the Wellbeing Summit, because I do want to be honest, Ms. Rusk has worked through a budget, and the $100,000 is sort of minimal to put this on. I mean, we don't know how much it's going to cost because we haven't formulated it yet, but if we start putting that down to $50,000, we may not be able to actually do the summit.
Well, that's not the motion. The
Right, no, I
motion is the
understand.
$100,000.
Right, no, I understand, but I'm just saying maybe we can combine as we go out looking for funding for the summit to also look for additional funding for grants as well. All right, Councilmember Himmelrich.
Yeah, I have a few questions about this. My first one is, how much do we have in council discretionary funds?
Over $700,000.
And how much of that is carried over from last year?
About half.
Yeah.
So it's funny that Councilmember Howard talked about the micro grants, because the first thing I thought when I saw this 100,000 number, which is the biggest number I remember ever doing in discretionary funds since I've been here, was, wow, that's 200 micro grants, right? I mean, with $700,000, I am probably comfortable, but I also believe that that this is an abstract idea at the moment, and when we're spending our discretionary funds, I agree with Councilmember Morena that we need to look, as we talk about all the time, at outcome. And I do want to understand what the outcome is anticipated here, how many people will be here, how many attendees, will it be talking, will it be action? I have to say that it seems like for a small city like ours, which has grabbed onto this great idea of well-being, the idea of having a summit seems to be more self-promotion than self-improvement. And so I want to understand why that isn't true.
Okay, I guess I'll address that. I don't think we're promoting the city. We're not trying to use the Wellbeing Summit to say, hey, look at Santa Monica. The specific point of the summit is to explain to people, because I think a lot of people in the community are unclear as to what our Office of Civic Wellbeing does. I think they're unclear as to the work that has been done, both around things like the Wellbeing Survey, as well as the micro grants, and other work that's coming out of that office. So the idea is to talk about what well-being is in a community and what we as residents, as people in the community who work here, can do to improve community well-being. I think anyone who's looked at the results of the Wellbeing Survey recognize that we, despite being a very prosperous and I think, you know, for the most part, well-off community, still have a long ways to go on a lot of measures that you see on the Wellbeing Summit. For example, just to give one that jumps out at me because it has a personal connotation, is the number of our middle school and high school students who describe themselves as being sad or very sad more than 5-10 days a month. And as people know, we have had some unfortunate incidents, suicide incidents. And so that's the sort of thing, if we can start to talk about how do we address these issues in the community in a concrete way. It has always been my understanding, this is, like I said, not going to be talking heads, but some of the talking heads are important to help describe what this work is, and then a call to action and a description of the actions people can take, just like we have done. If we had talked, if you take the word well-being and substitute homelessness, we've already, in a sense, done this. We have a homeless steering committee. They had meetings, and they have come up with the action plan, which has now evolved into We Are Santa Monica, about not just what is the city doing about homelessness, but what are individuals in the community. And that, I think, would be a sort of good metric in terms of the outcome for the Wellbeing Summit. That's not just about the city taking action to improve community well-being, but what can individuals and other groups in the city do as well.
So the target of the summit is the residents and people who work in the city of Santa Monica?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cole, you're next in the queue.
It's not my practice to weigh in, and I don't mean to do that here. I just wanted to note, particularly since Councilmember Morena talked about how much we have invested in well-being. Yes, when there were some tragic events that affected young people in our community, this city mounted the first ever youth well-being index to look at the health across the board of young people. And that led to this city being selected out of some 300 cities that applied for the first ever Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge. We were one of the 5 cities selected out of 300, based upon the work we had done as a community around youth well-being. That resulted in a grant of $1 million to the city, which underwrote the vast majority of the work we have done on creating the Wellbeing Index. That, in turn, sparked the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to designate us as one of less than a dozen cities that year as a community of health. And that resulted in a $25,000 grant, which we applied and was the funding for the microgrants in the PICO neighborhood. We have heard from the PICO community that they didn't want to just talk about traditional land use zoning, that they wanted to talk about the well-being of their community. And that's why the focus of the PICO project that you sent us out to work on is broader than traditional land use planning, but incorporates a broad definition of well-being. The Fitbit Corporation, inspired by our well-being work, gave our community 200 Fitbits to distribute to anyone who at random applied from the zip code that overlaps the PICO neighborhood, because of the findings that showed that exercise there was an important part of improving community well-being. The Kaiser Corporation, Kaiser Health, underwrote 7 videos about. So we have consistently had support that's brought in, well over $1 million of resources to our community to apply to better understanding and better improving. The Wellbeing Index has led to changes in how we do a number of programs. I'm not going to tick all those off tonight, but the council instructed us to focus as one of your 6 framework priorities on an engaged and thriving community. I think there's nothing more central to an engaged and thriving community than to enlist our community in understanding that many things they're already doing, advocating for a soccer field, joining a neighborhood watch program, participating in community affairs, including coming here to council and speaking, whatever their age. All of those things are what we define as an engaged and thriving community, and all of those scientific research demonstrates go to this larger concept of community well-being. So I just want to explain that this is not just about spending money. This is about enlisting what has been a significant amount of nonprofit and corporate support and volunteer activity in our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Winterer.
So what's the timeline? When do we think about doing this?
I think the plan was to do it by the end of the calendar year. I think it was pretty generalized, probably not right in the middle of the holidays, but towards the end of the calendar year.
That was my only question.
All right, Councilmember McEwen.
As long as City Manager Cole brought up the PICO neighborhood-specific well-being and zoning plan, we have a meeting about that on Thursday night. Could you tell us a little bit about that in case people who are watching would like to be part of that meeting at Virginia Avenue Park?
Sure. In tackling the larger opportunity to co-design and co-create improvements in the well-being of the PICO neighborhood, there was a desire on the part of some of those who came forward, specifically the PICO Neighborhood Association, to put zoning first. Other people disagreed with that, said we can't really figure out the zoning until we do a broader. So we ended up with something of a hybrid. We have done a lot of groundwork so far, but we've developed a track that would allow the zoning consideration of the PICO Boulevard corridor to go to the Planning Commission in the next several months, and then ultimately the City Council. The workshop on Thursday at Virginia Avenue Park, I believe it's 7 p.m., we can check that, is about the proposals from the zoning division or planning, advanced planning division for zoning changes that have come from the community discussions that we've been having and workshops we've been having over the last several months on the well-being of the PICO neighborhood in general, and also on how zoning fits into that.
And actually, it starts at
Thank
6:30 p.m. at Virginia Avenue Park on Thursday.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Councilmember McEwen, you're finished? All right. Seeing no further speakers in the queue, since it's money, we probably should have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moreno?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember McCune?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember Hara?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis?
Yes, that passes unanimously of the 6 of us here. Thank you very much. I believe that is the last agenda item before we get to public comment. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Next, we have public input. Public comment is permitted only on items not on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits the city council from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item, and you have 3 requests to speak.
All right. Our 3 speakers are Denise Barton, Jonathan Foster, and Mila Reason.
Good evening. Let's look at another way you choose to treat me differently. By editing me out of the Santa Monica's posting of City Council meeting YouTube videos. Some examples of this would be my January 22nd, 2019, Item 1 closed session presentation, or on February 12th, 2019 City Council meeting where you edited out again my Item 1 closed session presentation, as well as my Item 11A for you opting out of the Los Angeles County Congestion Management Program. So what are you trying to cover up? That you lost the district voting case and have no basis for appeal? Or how there are so many contradictions in the statements you made about it? Such as you saying that you want the residents' input on the districts, when in reality you told your lawyers that it's the stakeholders or businesses' input you're really interested in. Or that the city has not had a permanent ADA coordinator in almost 10 years, isn't it? So when a valid ADA complaint is brought to the temporary rotating ADA person, you're told to get a lawyer. Or for parking, you claim 1 parked car for every 7 spots, yet on February 12, 2019 staff report for item 8A, on page 9 it states, the structures maintain peak occupancy between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. Or is it the new monthly structural parking rate, which will now equal 15 hours or more at $15 an hour? Or do you not want anyone to hear about the findings from the UCLA Institute of Transportation that metro ridership is down 72%, or that there's been a dramatic increase in car ownership in Southern California as a whole? The opposite of what you said about loose. So if you agree that residents' input should not be edited out of the city Santa Monica's posting of city council meeting YouTube videos, or if you found that you've been edited out of the city council's posting of YouTube videos, please contact the Federal Trade Commission at 877-382-4357. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Mr. Foster?
3 topics. I couldn't be here. I wanted to compliment Laura Avery, Farmers Market Supervisor. For the record, great job handling the Farmers Market event aftermath. In 2003, I took off a Monday, but my plans fell through and I switched it to my day off for Wednesday, July 16th, 2003. And I was looking at the farmer's market when Russell Weller sped through the farmer's market, and I saw everybody. He killed my friend Leroy Laddier, 6'4" black guy. Even just last night, I was setting up the drums and a helicopter flew over, and I just lapsed back into remembering the Mercy flights, the helicopters. They landed at the intersection of 3rd and Wilshire. I remember, I think it was 9 times, and it's still traumatizing. Next one, Ken Ginzer Square out here. I read the plaque for him a few months ago. It says he dedicated his life to Santa Monica. A month later, I learned Tony Vasquez climbed the ladder to the Board of Equalization and didn't do the same as Ginzer. I realized that Bloom and Shriver and others, the same thing, were not dedicated to Santa Monica. In 2018, in November, on the ballot for Los Angeles, the vote for getting daylight savings time. When I was wrongly suspended from the 3rd Street Promenade Performers Program, in my hearing, I argued the very same fact. The time change is problematic. Same message LA is sending. And I was wrongly suspended, and my case should have been dismissed. And I still wish to sue the city for $58,000 because you wrongly took my freedom of speech away on 3rd Street Promenade. because the reason I got a ticket was because they had changed up an hour. I was only off an hour. It's not even a misdemeanor, but here they were taking away my freedom of speech. I mean, it's very mean, very mean.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. I have Mila Reason, but I do not see Miss Reason. So I think that concludes the meeting. Do we have any adjournments this evening? Not seeing any, then this meeting is adjourned. We have a slightly different schedule next month due to some conflicts that we all have regarding various meetings. So our next meeting is March 5th, next week. I'll see you all then. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, Greg, did you?
Sorry, can I make an adjournment?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's all right. After 40 years of battling cancer, my friend's mom, Mary Ann Ralston, passed away. I grew up with Nick and her son, her daughter grew up with my brother here on 11th and Bay. She was such an incredible woman. I don't think any of us knew that she had cancer growing up. But she was a mother to us all. She was an incredible woman, and she passed away last week. So if we can close this meeting in her honor, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely, and we'll send our condolences to all her family and friends. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all on March 5th.
Thank you.